it's my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker. Dr. Kelsey Leonard is a water scientist, legal scholar, policy expert, writer, and enrolled citizen of the Shinnecock Nation. Dr. Leonard is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo, where her research focuses on Indigenous water justice and its climatic, territorial, and governance underpinnings. Dr. Leonard seeks to establish Indigenous traditions of water conservation as the foundation for international water policymaking. Welcome, Dr. Leonard.
Akwa, Winikasak, hello, good day, everyone. I'm so happy to be joining you for this virtual Indigenous Peoples Day curriculum teach-in. It's really such a great honor and pleasure to be in conversation with all of you today on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, Indigenous Earth Law, or maybe the intersection of the two. So to start, I introduced myself in my Algonquin Shinnecock language, Akwa meaning hello, Winikasak meaning good day. This is important because I wanted to also orient you, as I have on this slide, to where I come from. Place is so important to how we understand being good stewards in the world. So here, as I noted, I'm a citizen of the Shinnecock Nation. We're a coastal Algonquin tribal nation, First Nation, located on the east end of what is currently known as Long Island, New York. So as you can see here on this map, we're coastal peoples. We are tied to the ocean, to the sea, to the Atlantic, to what it really means to be people of the water. And actually, in our language, Shinnecock means people of the shore or people of the stony shore. So I often think about that. I think about the way in which our ancestors had such foresight to know that it was important to guide us, to teach us what it means to be Shinnecock people is to maintain that connection to the shore. And not just maintain a connection, but to understand that within that connection is embedded a deep responsibility for water protection and shore protection. So that brings us to what we're going to talk a little bit today about, which is Earth Law. It's a new emerging area of law, as we might see it within the more Western conceptualization of law and legal systems. But in fact, it's actually a pretty ancient form of law when we think about Indigenous law and in context of Indigenous law around the world, but also centered here within what we currently know as North America. So for those that have maybe never heard of the sort of re-emerging term of Earth Law, it means to recognize, honor, and protect nature's inherent rights to exist, thrive, and evolve. It also means that we work towards a future in which humans and nature flourish together. That sounds pretty reasonable. It sounds pretty respectful. It sounds like something we should already be doing. But in practice and in history, our treatment of the Earth and our current climate crisis has shown us that we have leaned in towards domination over nature, towards consumption of nature, rather than stewardship, responsibility, respect, and relationality. So we need to reimagine the world that we want for each other. We need to reimagine the world that we want for future generations. And oftentimes the future of that work is centered in global movements led by our young people, led by some of the students that you are teaching now. And so when we think about Earth Law globally and how is it manifesting or re-emerging within our current context, well, we know that it's a global movement from the United States to Colombia, to Uganda, to India, to Aotearoa, New Zealand. We are seeing new laws and legislation emerge that are out for protecting the planet and not necessarily for human benefit first. It's really to say, what types of laws and legislation can we create that puts nature first, that asks, what do we need to protect for nature to exist, thrive, and naturally evolve, recognizing its inherent rights. And we see this emerging through constitutional amendments, through court decisions, through local ordinances, and ultimately either reemergence or rematriation of Indigenous law, and a recognition that within Indigenous law, there are elements of Earth law that have been present across the planet and on continents for millennia. So when we take a deeper dive into what does Indigenous Earth law look like, how could it be represented in your classrooms? Well, you could reference local constitutions of tribal nations and First Nations across what is currently known as the United States and Canada. The Ho-Chunk Nation recently went through a referenda process of revising their constitution to recognize the inherent rights of nature. We also see tribal council resolutions across the United States emerging, such as the recognition of the Klamath River by the Yurok tribe in 2019. We also see international and intertribal organization resolutions emerging, as well as co-governance and the first recognition of the inherent rights of a river in what is currently known as Canada, with the Magpie River, led and now co-managed by the Innu First Nation. We see opportunities for respecting our inherent relationality with our more than human relations through treaties, through those that were passed hundreds of years ago to those that are reemerging in new contexts, like the Northern Tribes Buffalo Treaty, protecting the rights of the buffalo to exist in their natural environment. We also see lawyers and rights defenders for the planet and earth defenders fighting in the courts right now, either through amicus briefs or other types of litigation to protect the rights of the planet. One recent case using the protections on monomen or wild rice by the White Earth Ojibwe Nation is being litigated right now in defense against Pipeline Line 3 and the proliferation of other pipelines that have devastating impacts for not only water, but for monomen throughout our Great Lakes. And then we're seeing other types of replicable models like water declarations, the inherent use of Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination to articulate in defense of earth and water and fire, these inherent rights and inalienable rights of nature. And so we look to our water protectors. We look to phrases such as water is life, but even more than just a phrase, it's a form of essentiality of understanding our connection and place in this world. And we need more of that. We need to be instilling that within a new era of education and for the curricula of youth. Now, you may ask, and I have often been asked in this case, how did I come to do this work? What drives me in being passionate about water protection and shore protection? Well, yes, it does come from my background as a Shinnecock person, but it also comes from the teachings that I've had in relationship to great mentors. One in particular who had heard a prophecy within the Anishinaabe community that in the future, an ounce of water would cost as much as an ounce of gold. And when that prophecy was retold to me by a great Nokomis or grandmother, I said, wow, as a water scientist, as a water policy analyst, as someone working in this field of water governance, it feels like we're already there. It feels like the way in which we have devalued water has made it such a water scarcity problem and security issue across our planet, from day zeros and water shutoffs to the current emerging droughts that we see around our planet. So when this grandmother heard this prophecy, she was asked, what are you going to do about it? And she went and she sat with other grandmothers. And they decided that they were going to walk for the water. They were going to reclaim and rematriate water protection through ceremony, through prayer, and through doing. And so you can see here in these wonderful illustrations by Joanne Robertson from a book called The Water Walker, this is what Nokomis decided to do. And she, along with other grassroots grandmothers and water walkers of all ages, creeds, genders, walked the Great Lakes. And in fact, they walked them multiple times in the past 2 decades. As you can see here from Lake Superior to Lake Ontario and along the St. Lawrence River, water protection was enacted through water walking. And there were two organizations that were formed called the Mother Earth Water Walkers, as well as Nebe-Walks, and they continue to walk for the water. It's also a form of what we mentioned earlier of Earth Law. This is Earth Law being manifested through Indigenous law, where Indigenous law says that we have a right and a responsibility for the protection of water through ceremony and prayer. And so since this grandmother started water walking in 2003, there have been more than 120 walks and counting that have been held around the world in prayer and ceremony for the water. So you might be asking yourself, what is water walking? Well, from the water walkers themselves, it says to be like water. And oftentimes when we take on that responsibility to be like water, we are more purposeful in our intent to listen, to be conscious, to witness what is happening around us in our natural world and to the water itself. And hopefully, in doing so, we not only pray for the water, but we are called to a form of action to be better stewards for the water. So this is also something I hope will inspire your classrooms. The water walkers inspired water walks, as I mentioned, around the planet. And now they also inspired junior water walkers, led by an elementary school teacher out of Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada, named Peter Cameron, who had a really beautiful relationship with one of the Nokomisses I mentioned earlier, Josephine Mandamin Baugh. It's often seen as the original water walker. She hated that moniker, but it is of a good point of reference. And so through their beautiful relationship and mentorship and friendship, they built a program called the Junior Water Walkers. And it's important to understand what the Junior Water Walkers are, is that they are an opportunity for classrooms to take on the responsibility of understanding our connection to water and foster that innovation for future generations of young people around the world. And to really take on grandmother Josephine Mandamin Baugh's values in relation to water. And so their mission or their value statement is to connect, reflect, respect, and protect water. And this idea, these principles came from a conversation that Peter Cameron had with grandmother Josephine Baugh. And in which she said, we're all born of water. We're all connected with the water. We're all related in that way. Even though we're not related by blood, we're related by water. So water is very precious for us. And as a Shinnecock woman, as someone who is from a coastal environment and seeing the ocean and sea on a consistent, connected basis, we also understand water not to be something that divides us, but that connects us to all different parts of the world. And I believe that this is what grandmother Josephine Baugh was trying to inspire around the world. And so you can actually go and sign up. The link will be shared with you. You can go and sign your classroom up to be junior water walker classrooms. And really what that means is that you're going to be inspired to teach children, to teach young people, to teach university students, all ages, how to connect to water, how to reflect on that connection that they're building with the water. And through that reflection, build a deep sense of respect for the water that then empowers you to want to protect the water. And so I also want to highlight that there are two wonderful books, I think books of all ages, although categorized as children's books, that really do inspire an ethic of not only Earth law, but Indigenous law through the lens of water protection. And that is The Water Walker, some of the images I showed earlier, illustrated by Joanne Robertson, and also written by. And then We Are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Good, now a recent Caldecott winner, for the beautiful illustrations that show our deep connection to water. So I leave you with a challenge to ask you, what are you going to do for the water? Just as Josephine Baugh had her own instruction and challenge after hearing that prophecy, what are you going to do about it? And it's something, it's a challenge and a call to action and a question that you should be asking of your students as well. And hopefully you might feel inspired to be a junior water walker classroom, to learn about Earth law, to learn about Indigenous law, to build that into your classroom environment and allow for students to not only understand water as a chemical element within our world, but to really foundationally understand that they can connect to water, that they are born of water, that they have an opportunity to reflect on that relationship to water, to build a respect for water that inspires and empowers them to protect water. And so I encourage you again to go to the Junior Water Walkers website to learn more about what they're doing. And if you have the time and feel inspired, you can sign up for a new initiative that they have for water boxes, where you can actually be a vessel for this messaging. You can be a carrier of the water box as a classroom for a whole year. And it's sort of a time capsule of sorts, where your students will get to share their reflections with the water, put those into the box, and the boxes will circulate in future years to classrooms around the world and are being also tracked within Google Earth. So you'll be able to see your box maybe started in Michigan and it ends up in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So with that, again, I encourage you and hope you feel inspired to connect, reflect, respect, and protect water through Indigenous Earth Law and all of the ways in which you may have a connection to water in your daily lives. With that, Tabutni, thank you, and I look forward to the wonderful ways in which you will learn and grow today over the next day.
Thank you, Dr. Leonard, for sharing such vital messages with us about the earth, the inherent legal and natural laws that govern them. And your presentation was so inspiring and gave us so much food for thought. It was a great way to start today's program. And I imagine that we're going to be seeing a lot more junior water walkers based on your presentation. Thank you.